Chris here from Chris Travels, and we have Tom here from Easy RV Products. And I know a lot of people that watch the channel, your main idea and the main thing that kind of drives you this lifestyle is the possibility of one time maybe being full-time, being on the road, have a mobile office. This young man here has actually pulled it off. You're about to get your first, well, not your first RV, but you're about to get an RV and go full-time.
Yep.
So if you can you kind of give us a history of how this came to be for you?
I think I was very fortunate growing up. My parents, always grew up with campers, tent camping, fifth wheels or RVs. So growing up, nearly every weekend we were out doing it. And I think that really built the sense of travel into me. As I graduated from high school, I worked in a factory a couple years, trying to kind of woke up and realize, well, that's not something that I wanted to do my whole life. I'd wake up in the morning and say, only 45 more years and I can retire and do things that I want. So after a couple years, I went into the service. I was very fortunate. I lived overseas for 5 years. Really got the travel bug then. Got out of the service and went back and did my college, my undergraduate and graduate work. Did the corporate sector for a while, but like many of us my age, I got to the point where as my parents got older, they were needing a little more care and assistance, and I was doing a lot of traveling back and forth, and that's when I really started to look at going into business for myself and doing things. And I had started a business that I was able to be at home a lot during the week and just gone on the weekends that I looked after my parents. It was a small thing, but it afforded me to help my father through some of his treatments and things and give my parents a little more comfort level. My father passed. I went back to the corporate sector. I did some consulting work and then ran a food processing plant for a year and just came to the realization that that's really where my heart wasn't there, that I really wanted to travel more. With my father gone and my mother getting older, I wanted to be closer to her and give her a little more attention, so I decided to really look at different options. And then one day I received a call from my very dear friend's wife that he had a heart attack and passed away. And that hit me hard because we'd worked together for a long time. We're very close and always talked about our dreams. And when he hit 55, he got to the point where he said, hey, 2 more years, the house is paid for, the vehicles are paid for. All we're gonna do is we're gonna travel the rest of our life. And 56, that was his goal, was for 57, and 56 and a half, he had a major heart attack and passed away before he saw his dream come true. And that weighed heavy, on me for a long time. The idea of my mother getting older. And so I really looked at where I was in my life, and I wanted to be somewhere that gave me a little more autonomy and a little more freedom. So I decided to go back to school. I really looked at what type of job that I could do that would be mobile, that one, I could have some flexibility and work my own hours, so if I needed to take my mother to doctor's appointments and things that I could, but also with the ultimate goal that I didn't want to wait till I was retired or till I was 60 or 65 to start traveling. I wanted to build something that when I didn't have the caregiver role anymore, that I could start traveling full-time on my own and start living my own dream. So I elected to go back to school. It was a hard decision to kind of give everything up, go back to school in your 50s and learn a new career. But I started to learn graphic design, which it was hard for me at first because I came from an operations and an analytical background, and I had a hard time finding if there was a creative side inside of me. But I found that I really loved the graphic design and packaging and working on the internet and websites and things like that. And so I took those classes, I went through it. As I got close to graduating, I happened to be talking on the phone to a good friend of mine, Donald Chin, who owns Easy RV Products. And he'd been doing Easy RV Products for a little over 8 years. But we hadn't talked to each other in a couple years. Life had got busy. He was busy growing his side of the business. I was busy, redirecting my life on what I was going to do. And we started talking, and I said, well, I'm at a place now, I'm scared. I'm looking for clients. It's a new section of my life and freelancing. And he was talking about how he'd grown the business, but he felt that he was kind of restricted and growing as far as he could and didn't know how to take it to the next step further. And as we talked for 2 or 3 hours that night. We just really realized what we were both looking for just happened to come together. I was looking for a business or a part of a business or my own business that I could be mobile and travel with. He was looking for someone that he trusted but had the business knowledge and the corporate background that I had that he didn't have. And so we started talking more over the next couple weeks, and we became partners and have partnered up in the business. I run the customer service side of it, the back-end operations, all of our dealer contacts, and a lot of the paperwork side of it. He manages our retail operations that we have in Arizona during the winter in Quartzsite and Yuma, manages our shipping warehouse and the day-to-day shipping, and it just had really gelled out nicely. And even from the start, he's known that I've wanted to travel full-time when I don't have the caregiver role anymore. And so I've really designed my half of the business with that in mind. And now, even as I look at rigs, I've looked at RVs, I've looked at fifth wheels, I've looked at toy haulers, and I'm really leaning to the toy hauler side where I can build a full office in the back and live my dream and work from the road and still service the customers the way we've been doing. And as I've gotten more into it more and looking at how I do it, and I've gotten more excited, I realize there's a whole section of the population that's just really how they're driven. A lot of people, like Chris has said, want to do it but are afraid to do it. I was scared crapless at the idea of selling everything I'd worked for and owned, and the house and getting a rig, and I'm sure many of the people that watch us can relate to that. And many of the people who've thought about it, and then some good friends who travel full-time put it in perspective by just saying, hey, it's just stuff. You can always get more stuff later on. So I decided to go for it, and that's the way the business is being driven. Chris and I were talking last night, and one of the statistics that came up with the younger generations now is that the article I was reading, by 2020, they say 50% of the workforce is going to be contract labor and freelancers, and that more and more corporations now are building contract work into their actual budget as budget lines. And so the younger generation has really embraced, I think, the traveling aspect of life, but struggle with the how do I work and travel at the same time. And I just really think that that's the way things are going, and there's more people like me who really want the freedom and want to live their dream, and it's possible.
They want to do it, but it's just like, well, this might work for him, but how will it work for me? Like, what do you attribute to your success in being able to do this?
The hardest thing is you struggle with is, what can I do and when is the right time? And the one thing I can honestly say that I found, and I think everybody who does it does the same way, is found, is there is no right time. You just need to do it. You just need to sit down one day and say, if I'm going to live my dream, I need to just do it. In terms of finding what you can do, there are so many things out there. You can work camp and live for free and get a pay for it. There's people that just do crafts and sell crafts full time. There are pickers that go out and pick and sell on eBay. There are IT specialists and app specialists who have taken their business from inside the cubicle and taken it on the road and realize they're just working behind a computer anyways, anywhere. Anyways, they can do that anywhere. There are so many opportunities out there. You don't have to be retired. I met a girl who, she was from French Canada, and she was a translator. And so she was going around and just doing contract jobs over the internet, translating, and she had found a manager that finds work for her, and she was doing translation work for Apple Computer, translating manuals and other things like that. And it's just really a matter of digging deep into your heart and looking at where your passion is.
So do you see this time in history as a new awakening for people being able to travel and see new things, or do you think that there's always been people out there wanting to do this? There was just no avenues before the internet, before things became so connected like they are now.
I think it's both. You know, we talked last night that my generation, we got caught up in you go to work, you accumulate things, you rack up credit card bills, and you just live your life and you do your thing. I think the younger generation and the millennials have really grasped they don't want the credit card debt, they don't want the student loans, and they've really taken to that approach that they want to have a more quality of life and a more balanced life. I think that the people my age have the same thing. You know, my father's generation, they got a job, they felt that you work at a company for 40 years and then you retire and get your pension, and that's just not how the real world works anymore. So I think that as a lot of people become frustrated with their situation, whether it's due to the housing bust or the stock market bust or anything that might have happened in their life that have changed their perspective, I think more and more people are looking at how can I do it, and a lot more people are doing it at younger and younger ages. They're not waiting till 65 anymore.
So one last thing to wrap up this interview, if you kind of touched on this earlier, but if somebody was on the cusp, they're thinking about doing it, and they just can't get over that last little hump to commit to a lifestyle like this, commit to trying to go back to school to find some sort of degree or some sort of education or some sort of apprenticeship, what advice would you give them to push them over the hump to try and get them to follow through?
My definite is don't feel that you need to do it today. Set a goal and set a date. And if that date is 1 year from now or 1.5 years from now, do everything within your power to pay off as many bills as you can. If you can become debt-free, that's a great way to do it. I've worked the last 2 years paying off bills, but just come to a decision that this is the date, this is I'm going to do it no matter what. And during that year, build everything that you need to do. Find the business that you like, research it, start to do it while you still have an income coming in. And then as you're starting to build the revenue and income from the business that you want to do long term, you still have the income and security blanket of your regular job. But if you don't come to terms with that definitive date that this is what I'm going to do, and set your goals, and this is what I'm going to have my rig, and this is what I'm looking for, you'll never do it, because the right time will just never come.